Today, I want to cover the text messages from the Charlie Kirk assassination suspect. And the reason why is because originally in my video where I talked about the conspiracy theory and the case for Israel being behind the assassination, this was something that I had mentioned a little bit and kind of talked, pointed out a few things that were kind of weird about it. But here I want to dive a bit deeper because in a lot of these items that have been submitted to us as proof, there's a lot of really interesting things that I have flagged myself that seem to be wrong with these documents. Mostly missing timestamps, very strange language. And Candace Owens really had kind of jumped in and has slammed this very heavily. And I watched that, agreed with a lot of her assertions. But I'm going to watch Breaking Point's giving their analysis of it and then give mine on top of that as well. So we'll get into the video and then I can provide my thoughts on the matter.
Why don't we get to the Candice thing? Because this is a setup of what the downstream lack of trust in Kash Patel, law enforcement, and all of that generally is showing, where there is a huge amount of skepticism. Ryan and Emily covered.
And really quick, kind of related, unrelated, but since he brought up Kash Patel here, this is literally worse than DEI in this situation. Because at least with DEI, you get the most qualified disabled minority. Whereas here, you get selected essentially some crony. It's like cronyism on steroids, where Donald Trump is just going to select a loyalist that has absolutely no morals and will go along with whatever Donald Trump tells him to do. So you're not just getting a smaller pool of you're getting literally the dumbest person, which I think is fully manifest with Kash Patel. I just wanted to call that out real quick because that's what I've thought of most of Trump's appointees, is that he has went to the pool of the people who have expressed the most undying loyalty to him. And in a lot of situations, he has inserted those people in his cabinet. And then when a crisis like this happens, you get literally the dumbest explanations, the dumbest proof, the dumbest, this guy is possibly the dumbest person ever to have been inserted in any governmental role. So just wanted to make that statement right off the bat here.
The text messages yesterday that were put in the criminal complaint against Charlie Kirk, alleged assassination, Tyler Robinson, and including these text messages between Robinson and his boyfriend. And in those text messages, he appeared to not only confess to the crime, but also talked about, wanting to go back and retrieve the rifle. However, a lot of people are focusing on some of the particular language that is being used here by Robinson. Candace Owens, one of the more high-profile people, questioning the legitimacy of these messages. Here's what she had to say.
Yeah, these messages are clearly doctored, is what I would say. They're doctored. Now, they could decide why.
And there's a few reasons why, if you actually look at this. Number one, the thing that is the weirdest here, and I'll let her get into her case for it, but one of the ones that is very interesting is number one, there's no timestamps, right? That was kind of the first red flag that I was thinking about when they had released these. How can you follow any sort of, you should have the full metadata included in any of this that's released. And so when you see it, it should have the time and the date on each and every single one of these. Now, obviously, they're not going to want to release that because that could basically incriminate them and raise an even bigger red flag of, well, this doesn't match up to what your narrative has been. But then the other thing too is that these are obviously not the full exchange. The full exchange should be released. And it's damning, to say the least, that it's not fully released, because what are you leaving out and why? It's and it's not even we know the roommate's name. Why do you have just roommate on there? And oh, by the way, the ellipses on there. So if you look at the actual documentation, there's 3 dots. And usually what that signifies is if you're doing writing, professional writing, what that means is that, okay, I cut out, like if you're doing a quote from someone, I cut out this portion of the quote that was given, and usually it's done for coherence reasons, right? So if someone gives you a kind of a long rambling quote, you can shorten it and you can still get the point of the quote across if it's done in good faith. That's usually where these ellipses, this ... If you see that in a quote, that's what it means. Is it's not the actual full quote, but it just needed to be shortened for whatever reason. Usually, again, because the person is rambling. But the fact here that they are leaving out, that's why you see here where it's like Robinson, 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 Robinson. Like he didn't send, or you wouldn't imagine, he sent 5 messages in a row. And so, A, why are they cutting things out? Or that's the generous interpretation. They're cutting things out probably to try and protect the roommate. Or the less generous interpretation is maybe they didn't even want to try and make it a back and forth. They just wanted to make it as short as possible, put all of the relevant information, and you'll see why shortly here. But it's essentially to, here's the checklist of all the things that justify all the things that the narrative that we're selling. Here's the motive, here's the weapon, here's where I left it, here's how I changed my clothes, why would you literally list every single thing in a narrative fashion and you wouldn't, it's just wild. This is one of the many reasons it makes no sense. But I wanted to specifically call out the ellipses and all the irregularities with this that initially set off red flags in my head. Like, again, I want timestamps. I want all of it. Like, the whole thing needs to be released. And similarly with the Discord messages that they've also released, yes, it looks to have been done in Discord, but again, there's no timestamps. I need timestamps. I'm not believing any. This just does not pass the smell test. And you need to have an extra high level of proof, right? You need to bring me the time. You need to have, because already I do not believe you. It is already not adding up. And so you need to prove above and beyond that you are providing us with actual accounts of what is going on.
Is what I would say. They're doctored. Now, they could decide why they're doing that. Tyler's being forthcoming. We're protecting him in some capacity. I find that to be unacceptable. Okay? Unacceptable. I want every single text message. I want timestamps. It is conspicuous that you are not telling us when this was sent, because it sounds like it's when the campus is on lockdown and he's got to go back and he's got to clean up. And then all of a sudden we're in the next day when his dad is getting clued in after the picture's been released. They're not telling us that. Okay. And you have a right to be a little bit uncomfortable about that because
it's sloppy. And again, this is why when you put in some sycophant that is a Trump loyalist instead of someone who is actually qualified, well then, he can't even have the wherewithal to understand that, hey, the public is already beginning to get skeptical. Like he's just not paying attention or something. Who knows what he's doing? But it's not paying attention. And if he was, he would understand, even if he's doctoring all of this, I need to be extra careful with how I'm doctoring this. I need to include timestamps. And by the way, I need to make sure that I look back and see, here is my timeline of events and align the times that I am putting in the information, like, my dad is confronting me about it. Make sure that it aligns to, after the fact of, this information has been released and the father has had ample time to view it and is now reaching out and asking, what's going on here? Because if you release it too soon after, like it does. He's really going to be able to see it and say, oh, that looks like my son, if it's released in the middle of the day, or if it's like the minute after this information was released, or whatever. There's just many reasons why it would be weird if they released the wrong timestamps. And I'm sure for them, they just wanted to avoid that, assuming that they themselves created these documents, which is kind of the assertion here. Well, then, yeah, it would be very easy to get caught up on that kind of stuff, and especially if you're just not an intelligent individual.
I'm a bit uncomfortable about that. We need full answers.
And as bad as it's presented in Utah, I'm not buying all of it. I'm particularly not buying those text messages. It just seems too stilted, too much like a script, actually a bad script.
That's from Steve Bannon and from Candace Owens. Their allegation. I mean, look, nobody really does.
And like I had said, to Steve Bannon's point, yeah, it literally looks like a script. The point on the ellipses that I essentially am making here is that the reason why it even if you give them the most generous interpretation, that this is actually true and just the way that they're releasing it is completely stupid. The ellipses make it look like it is a script. To Steve Bannon's point, he didn't mention the ellipses, but it looks like a script because it's literally listing, again, it's like a checklist. I was wearing this clothing, then I switched into this clothing, then I went up on the roof, then I went down, then I hid the gun, then it just literally every single thing that they would need to stick this on him was listed in the text exchange. And when you don't have the back and forth to see how it organically played out, well, then it looks insane. Like, legitimately, it looks like you are feeding us a pile of garbage, because it's not organic. It doesn't look organic, just seeing one side of the conversation. So why are you doing this? Are you doing it because you're trying to protect the boyfriend? Or are you doing it because you fabricated it? As far as I can see, it could be either. It very possibly could be either. But it's certainly damning when you're not releasing the whole thing. You have no timestamps on it. It looks weird, to say the least.
By the way, Matt Walsh, many others have said the same thing. What they're saying is it almost looks as if Robinson is trying to absolve the boyfriend of pre-knowledge of the crime and of helping plan it. I mean, it's theoretically possible. They pointed to...
And that is the most generous interpretation. But the language used kind of points you in another direction, because a lot of the language was very strange.
Breaking Bad, for example, the famous Walter White scene where he tries to absolve Skyler on the phone. I wouldn't put it necessarily out of the realm of possibility, because if we're being, I mean, look, this is my own pure speculation. The messages are a bit weird. I mean, one of the things Candace...
They're really weird.
One of the things Candace brings up is vehicle. She was like, go in your text messages and search for the word vehicle. And I looked at it. The only time it has ever appeared is whenever I get a message from the service department of the car dealer saying your vehicle has ready for service, or from one of those spam messages from China where they pretend to be the DMV.
Right.
And they're like, your DMV.
Your vehicle registration
it's like plus
is expiring.
63 area code, your vehicle has, exactly, your tags have expired. There is.
And just for me doing this as well, there was one where I was using voice to text, and I was talking about vehicles being on the road when it was basically early. I was being followed by an unmarked police vehicle behind me, and it was going through a construction area, and I'm sure they were just trying to get me, basically like a speed trap, right? And I was going the speed limit, so I wasn't really worried about it. But I had texted my wife about it, and I basically said, yeah, there's less vehicles on the road. So that was one, and that was fairly recently. And then the other one was the mail truck. It basically, this woman that was driving drove the mail truck up on the sidewalk, which is quite a feat because it's not a beveled sidewalk. So she literally had to drive up on top of the curb. And so I was mocking that to my wife. And those are literally the only two instances in my entire text history that I have with my wife where I used the word vehicle. So it was literally less vehicles on the road, and then vehicle as a, and this is the only other way that, and there's another word that was weird because they called it a squad car, which was another one that Candice didn't call out in her review of the text exchange, which is another one where I go, I've never heard anyone use squad car aside from people who are literally in law enforcement. And so whenever and that was where I was thinking, oh yeah, that is where I would use vehicle. Because if it was like a police SUV or mail truck or something like that, I would use vehicle for that. Like I probably wouldn't call out the mail truck. I'd say, oh, the mail vehicle, which is what I did here. And then the other instance, I have one use with one of my friends that dates all the way back to November 21st, 2023, where he sent me a picture of something and I was joking around and I said, interesting that it's in your vehicle. It was literally just a joke. And so, and the reason why I used vehicle there was because his vehicle was a Jeep, right? So I'm not going to say interesting that it's in your Jeep, but it's because it's a very specific type of car or vehicle in this instance I would use. But like if I'm referring to my own vehicle, I would 100% use car because I drive a car. So, and what was he driving? A car. So very weird, but yeah, those are my literal only instances and reasons why I have used vehicle. I would not ever and have never used car. And this is in consideration that my wife and I have sold or are in the process of selling multiple cars. And so in those instances, I have used car a ton. So it's not like we haven't talked about cars at all or our own personal cars, right? So the fact that I've only used vehicle twice with her over selling / trying to sell 2 cars and or any exchanges with any of my other friends. Yeah, it's just, again, it's a very weird situation that he is using vehicle here.
Is not a single other reference. No, actually, I did text my wife once about Secret Service vehicle. That's what I said.
Secret Service vehicle.
And that's what I'm saying, where it's like, yeah, you're not going to say Secret Service car. You're using, again, mail vehicle, police vehicle, Secret Service vehicle. Like it's a very specific, it's like when you're calling out, it could be any sort of, right? Because vehicle could be motorcycle, SUV, car, right? Any of those sorts of things. So it's just a very large umbrella that you can classify all of a certain type. Like they all fit into a police vehicle. And that's essentially the point that I was making when I said, yeah, I would never use squad car. So like when they use the terminology squad car, it's a little bit weird because I would say police vehicle or police car even. I would never use squad car.
That's the only that's the only time I've ever referred to my car as my vehicle. To a car as a vehicle.
We're not Gen Z either. This is a 22-year-old who's typing like, and we had Ryan and Emily had Ken Klippenstein on.
And that's even more true. And the secondary point to that, so yes, number one, a 22-year-old using this language. But then number two, a super online who's engraving gamer speak into these shell casings, supposedly. He is going to use vehicle? Absolutely not. Like, that makes even less sense. Because not only his age, but then also that he's a gamer and is using gamer speak on shell casings. Like, this makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So yeah, very, very suspicious to say the least.
Yesterday, he'd spoken with his friends who said he was like pretty nonverbal, like he wasn't a very communicative individual. And then you see the, oh, my love, comma. That's the thing that got me is like the full-on sentences and punctuation.
Yeah, and that was another thing that I noticed when I looked at them is full-on like diatribes, right? That's why it's weird. It's like a narration of here's the literal checklist of all the things that you need to corroborate your original story. But then also, by the way, the capitalization is off, where some of them are capital, like the beginning of the sentences. Some of them are capitalized, some are not. The punctuation was really weird. Like sometimes they would end, because for me, I will write in full sentences and I make sure that my sentences have punctuation all the time, but I'm very consistent. Like it's very uncommon that you will get some sort of sentence for like some sort of text reply from me where I don't use proper punctuation. But yeah, very inconsistent where sometimes it has periods, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it is just not very consistent. And so that's why it makes me think, oh yeah, someone else wrote this and was just not even paying attention. Like it doesn't make any sense at all.
Because we're not imagining him at a computer typing. He's supposed to be like on his phone in the midst of what they're searching for him. He just murdered some dude and he's typing out these full-on like sonnet and using all this FBI speak in terms of the way he's communicating. And then the other part of it is like, it's very fortunate for the FBI that he fills in the blanks of all of the investigation pieces, like talks about the gun, talks about premeditation, talks about where he left him, talks about the outfit change. This part at the end where he's like, remember when I was engraving bullets with these memes?
Also, the other thing about that, like the bullets with the memes, even part of the text exchange is like, oh yeah, how, like the boyfriend essentially was, how long have you been planning this? And then he says about a week. So why would you even need that question? If you're aware of him engraving bullets, like, do you not think, like, you should know the time frame if you're the roommate / significant other / you were around when he was doing this. Like, you should have an idea of the time frame. Why are you asking about the time frame? It just doesn't, there's so many conflicting narratives just in this released text exchange, supposedly. So, yeah, it makes absolutely no sense. And also, like, you're not going to be, the other argument could be, oh, he just regularly, like, I can't imagine that you would regularly engrave stuff into or etch, sayings and all this kind of stuff into shell casings. What, like, who does that? You just to go to a shooting range and you're aware that he was doing this and it didn't raise any suspicions for you? And that's what makes me so suspicious about the Discord messages too, is like, they're all proper and this, that, and the other, and it's like, on one hand, you're claiming that, oh yeah, you were aware, you saw me etching these messages into shell casings, but that never like raised any sort of concerns or suspicions or like, what are we even talking about here? This makes absolutely no, like the whole story makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
Listen, it may be legit, but to tie it back in with Kash, when you have Kash Patel, who is both an incredibly, you have a politicized FBI run by Kash Patel, who's also an idiot and a moron and incompetent, then yeah, you're gonna have basically no one believing what you're putting out. And so I saw this across the board. Like, liberals don't believe it, leftists don't believe it, MAGA doesn't believe it. MAGA's theories kind of fall into two buckets.
Centrists don't believe it.
A bunch of them think that the messages are just completely faked by the FBI because Israel killed him. I don't see any evidence of that. Just putting that out there. That is one theory that is being routinely floated. And then,
by the way, shameless plug, go look at my Israel conspiracy theory video if you have not.
And the other bucket, and this is where Candice's theory, is that basically the messages are designed to absolve the roommate, boyfriend, lover, and so that's why they look and feel so strange.
To be honest,
I mean, listen.
My problem is with that theory is that the state of mind that you would have to have that level of wherewithal, because I mean, unless the roommate / boyfriend actually was implicated in it and was a participant and whatever, and you're trying to clear their name, right? Unless that is your entire goal, well then you would not, like, at the moment you wouldn't think, well, my roommate / boyfriend doesn't know about it, so oh, by the way, I'm also going to go in and try and prove that they didn't do it. No, you would just know they had nothing to do with this. I acted alone. And so, oh, by the way, I'm not, what is the purpose of me trying to do that? That's why it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me that is the justification, unless the roommate also participated in some way or another. And so, yeah, that's the only reason why I'm kind of skeptical about that claim, is that it just doesn't really track. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But that is the most logical explanation. But again, it just doesn't really track, because the roommate should have been, if this was actually what happened, the roommate shouldn't be implicated in it anyway. So a little bit confusing from there.
I have to see some evidence outside of just they feel weird before I'm going to float or concoct any sort of theory. But I don't think it's I think it's very reasonable that people are looking at this and going, this is a 22-year-old text. Okay,
well,
that
someone
seems
said
really strange.
It seems ChatGPT. So, for example, another thing.
And another thing that's kind of off topic from this, but I think still important, assuming that it was some sort of conspiracy theory and someone did it, that doesn't change how the country actually feels about Israel. Because I think the most proximate and most logical explanation is that they did it to silence him, so that his following and the people who believed in him and his ideologies, the reason that someone would have done it is to remove him, to silence his narrative. That's the thing that makes the most sense to me. However, that will not even achieve your goals, in my opinion, because it's not that he was influencing them to believe it. It's that he was noticing a trend of people turning on Israel and the war being incredibly unpopular, and he was just reflecting those beliefs. And although he might have begun to share those beliefs, at least for the war on Gaza, the bombing of Gaza and all that kind of stuff, again, he's bringing it up because his base, and from the campuses that he's going to, he's hearing this from them. So it's not a top to bottom, it's a bottom up. So again, yeah, I think if that is the goal of this action, it's not even, in my opinion, going to achieve those goals.
Candace said was search your text messages for retrieve. So I did. There are 3 retrieves in my entire history of having an iPhone. So since 2014, 2 out of the 3 are about golden retrievers. The other is a friend of mine on a bachelor party saying, "I'm happy to retrieve some Zin." That is the only mention.
And I will check mine as well. Literally 0 results. I have never used the word retrieve. And I will admit I'm very aggressive with deleting threads, but I have a few that have went on for a while, and I've never used or had someone use the word retrieve to me. So, for what it's worth.
Retrieve in my entire text message history.
Also,
I should message him and be like, "Why are you using the word retrieve?"
Calling his dad
weird.
his old man is I mean, maybe that's a Utah thing. I don't know. That he's got in here. He got.
And this is some validity that I would like to add to this too. Being from the same general region of the country as Utah, I have never heard anyone use old man. So yeah, very, very eyebrow raising as well. That is not terminology that I think anyone uses. And again, there is a lot of, like, if you've seen the maps of what do you call soda? Do you call it soda? Do you call it Coke? Do you call it, whatever? All these different things, right? And there's a map where it's literally you're more likely to call it this or this or this based on where you live in the United States. That's why I bring that up, is because it's not vernacular that I have ever heard used in the area. Like, I live in the same general whereabouts in the country, and I've never heard old man used probably ever in my entire life.
The motive in, he got the premeditation, he got the rifle details. Like, again, this was very fortunate for the FBI that they had this very strange, stilted conversation that laid out everything and filled in all of the holes in their investigation. That was very, very lucky for the FBI that all occurred in that way. So I don't know. I had my daughter, my 17-year-old, look at it, and she was like, "Mom, there is no one that texts like that." And she even noticed things like, okay, so a Gen Z thing is to turn off the auto cap so that at the beginning of...
You guys, stop doing that.
So at the beginning of sentences, it's not capitalized. They see it as like an old person thing to have your sentences capitalized. And in these texts, half of them are not capitalized and then half of them are. She also said, Yeah,
and that goes along with the inconsistencies as well. I did notice that as well. Yeah, not just... There's a ton of inconsistencies in it, which makes me think it's not the theory that it's ChatGPT did it, because the half of them were, half of them weren't, and then same thing with the punctuation at the end of the sentences. It was just all very inconsistent, which kind of makes me think that someone in the law enforcement did it because they were trying to emulate what they think a kid would do, but again, with phones and how you can treat them to do certain things, like you're going to be very consistent with it. And especially someone who is purportedly as intelligent as he is, you're not going to have, it's not going to be inconsistent and capitalized and then not capitalized and then period and not period. Like, it's going to be very consistent throughout.
how there's there's ellipses in here too. Now, I don't know if the ellipses are only where they cut off, because the conversation's not reproduced in full, but she also said those are old people dots. Anyway, there's strangeness in the conversation itself. It's very convenient for the FBI. And then when you add to it Kash Patel being a political apparatchik and an absolute complete moron, then you get across the board people being like, I just don't fucking believe it. Sorry, don't believe it.
Our producer Max says calling it a squad car instead of a cop. Yeah, he's onto something there. I don't even know if I've ever used the term squad car. Ever.
That's what makes me think that it is, a professional, like the police or an FBI agent or CIA or whatever. Someone did it is because recreated these messages. Is because, no one outside of an actual police officer would be like, oh yeah, let's go get the squad car. Literally no one in my entire life I have not heard anyone say that either. That was the one that, like I said, when I watched the original Candice version, when she actually was talking about all this, the squad car makes absolutely no sense. That was one that she didn't mention, but I flagged for myself where I'm like, squad car, no one uses that.
Play devil's advocate. Okay, this guy is a Mormon raised in this small town, sheltered environment in Utah, and he's very high IQ, potentially autistic. I mean, I'm just speculating, possibly, or mentally ill,
probably both.
Maybe.
And that is something that I also want to call out, is if he is very intelligent, it is, I think, more likely that consistency, trust me, anyone who I know that is very intelligent is remarkably consistent with the way that they will text. It's the same punctuation, same capitalization, commas correctly used, all that kind of stuff. Or the reverse, if they really just do not care at all, but it will be consistent. these back and forths. Again, it looks like it was probably worked on by multiple people. Multiple people had their inputs, their edits, there's this kind of stuff, and there's no consistency because there are so many people putting stuff in there.
Maybe a little bit of both. He just murdered someone. I don't know, allegedly. I don't know, maybe that changes your communication style because it certainly doesn't fit with other communications that were released, like from Ken in the Discord messages. But, the level of adrenaline, and you did this, in some ways on behalf of your...
But then the argument against that is, okay, but then you would expect the messaging to be more erratic, not so cold and calculated and let me lay out a checklist of all the different things of here's what I did and I premeditated it and I did, here's the gun and here's where it's located and I sketched these, this message on the bullet casing, and it just does not add up whatsoever. And like I said, if you would imagine if he had killed someone and it was his first time and there was any sort of effect on the way that he was speaking or whatever, it would make it more erratic, not less. And so that's where, again, it just does not add up.
Lover, and you're communicating with them. Like if I had to explain them in a non-conspiratorial way, those are the pieces I would put together to say, well, that maybe that's why. But certainly not very intelligent.
And even that, again, does not make sense.
If you were thinking that you were going to get away with this, to then go, because he says like, oh, I'm going to take this to, I was hoping I could take this to my grave, or, when I'm an old man or whatever, to then go and lay out every constituent element of the crime in easily discoverable text messages.
Yeah.
So.
And also, by the way, assuming that he's actually using the default messenger app, if he's doing that, like literally your logs can be pulled. Like, what are you talking about? And so, to do messaging like this, where, to absolve himself, your boyfriend could have leaked them, your carrier could have pulled the messages, like, any number of things could have happened where, like, there is no secrecy when you're sending text. So, like, I want to take this to my grave, but, oh, by the way, here's all the evidence to incriminate me. Makes absolutely no sense. And the other thing, too, is, like, if I was and granted, like, okay, the argument against this is that Gen Z does not, very non-confrontational. They would rather text than calls. A lot of them get anxiety from making calls. If you're intelligent, you should know that anything that you want to talk about, like with this, you want to be on the phone. You're not text messaging it. It goes being in person, making a call on the telephone, text messages. That's literally the safety level, top to bottom, of those three. That's the ranking. And so sending it on text message, dumbest thing possible. The only thing dumber than that would be if he went into the Discord server, or if he went, like, there's just so many holes in this story.
Exactly.
Not the brainiac move there.
Again, I reserve the right to be skeptical. I still think it's all weird. The entire thing, it seems...
And let me just put this to rest right now. The reason why they're being so generous is because they don't want to be taken as conspiracy theorists. They want to be taken seriously as news people. And so they're not willing to go as far as I am, making a video that says, here's the Israeli conspiracy theory, calling this complete and utter nonsense. Like, it makes no sense whatsoever. So, I understand why, but, like, I want you to understand why they are not going as far as I am willing to go.
Odd. It seems quite plausible and reasonable that he is trying to absolve his lover of any potential legal threats. I mean, or of any potential legal exposure. You will recall the governor had said it did appear that they didn't know anything about it, and that they don't believe at this time that there's some sort of grander conspiracy. I still find that a little bit hard to... I mean, look, the circumstance...
Which, again, makes no sense, because if you saw Tyler in scripting these casings, Why is he doing that? There is no red flags that went off in your head. I cannot buy into that.
Are weird. Like, you had that guy in the crowd. Yes, I understand he was kind of crazy. I don't know. I just find the entire thing a little bit preposterous.
They've given us no reason to have confidence in their narrative.
That's what I was going to say. Because I have covered this for so long, and now with Kash at the top, it's not just Epstein for me. It's Stephen Paddock. It's, I mean, even some of the, like the Pulse shooting, right? San Bernardino. What else am I thinking? Parkland, Uvalde, the UT or the Texas church, the church where that guy came in and killed everybody. Like, in every single case that I have covered of these, it's either known to FBI or killer is shot, and we don't really, say anything about some of the previous, interactions with that person, and the level of cover-up that usually ends up happening. Remember Uvalde, right? I mean, the Texas governor, the day after, is like, oh, it was heroic, and they responded perfectly, when you could look at the timeline and you're like, what the hell is going on here? They didn't go in for 2 hours or something?
Yeah, they were like sitting outside, and it basically came out that one of the parents was like, I'll go inside then, since you're not willing to. It was very strange, but just as an FYI, if you weren't aware of what went on in that case, since he's referencing it here.
I'm very sketched out by this entire thing, and especially in the context. I mean, it's kind of like 9/11, if you think about it. The official narrative was, they hate us for our freedoms, and that's why it all happened. That's why we need this massive crackdown, and we have to go to war in Iraq, and all of this. And, oh, the Saudi pages, don't worry about it. There's still some weird details. Yeah, I mean, in the 9/11 Commission report, right, where they claimed that they found the passport of one of the hijackers on the ground. I don't know, all right? I'm just saying. That's everything else burns up in jet fuel. The passport falls on the ground. Okay,
so
maybe.
To be honest with you, to me, the thing that is most persuasive to me that these text messages are real and genuine is actually that they are so stilted and weird.
Yeah, right.
That it's like,
you're right. That's Occam's razor.
Surely whoever was crafting these would do a better job than this.
And I just don't believe that, because Kash Patel. Number one, Kash Patel. Number two, someone who believes in a police officer that fully buys into Mormonism. I mean, just those two explanations alone completely shoot that out of the water. Those are the two dumbest people that I could imagine. Sorry, Mormons, but those are two of the people who I would most believe would craft something with this level of incoherency and inconsistency.
So I actually come back around full. So they're so weird and so strangely worded and so convenient. Like, it couldn't possibly be that they would be this clumsy if they were actually formulating some fake dialogue. But like you said, I think it's fair for people to look at this investigation, to look at who's at the head of the FBI, to look at, the degrading of institutional trust over years and decades if we go back to the Kennedy assassination, and say, listen, maybe, but you're gonna have to bring me some more evidence. I'm gonna need to be more persuaded than this strange text message conversation ultimately.
And that's why I say having the timestamps, releasing the full document of full correspondence, right? And the other thing too is that the longer this goes on without that being released in that manner, the less I am likely to trust you. Because now you're having people point out all of the inconsistencies, and then he can go back in and all right, let's add some additional detail to these documents. No, man, that's not it. Unless you have a literal screenshot with timestamps turned on for the message from the boyfriend's phone with the whole thing there, it cannot be doctored, but even then it can with AI. So I completely do not buy into the story that it was not fabricated. And oh, by the way, again, the longer that you wait to come out with the entire thing, the full thing in its entirety, I do not believe you whatsoever. And I'm not going to, because it's been fumbled and bungled so hard. I can't bring myself to it.
I completely agree. By the way, it's not just right wingers who are all saying.
Oh no, it's across the board.
Others.
This is very unifying.
I think it should be. All right, it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah. I think we had Brooklyn Dad Defiant as an example here.
Who is that, by the way?
Oh, you don't know. This guy is a resistance. He's a resistance icon. I'm shocked you know. He hated Bernie. Anyway.
I've muted most of these folks.
Die-hard lib. Okay. I don't believe these text messages were written by Tyler Robinson for a second. I didn't know him personally. I know that no 22-year-old writes text messages like this. This feels like that Steve Buscemi skateboard meme. How do you do, fellow kids? So, yeah, it is true.
Very good point and A+ meme reference. So, bravo. Very, very good.
Truly a bipartisan affair. I mean, obviously, like, liberals don't have any sort of faith in this FBI. There's been a real sort of like conspiracy alignment into the right where, you know, some of the like conspiratorial, like crunchy hippie 9/11 truther types were part of the RFK coalition and are now on, you know, in the MAGA base as well. And so you already have that impulse there. And then you have Kash having just absolutely torched any credibility that he had with his Epstein filing. And then you're asking people.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And the other thing, too, is like with Kash, yeah, when he was on Rogan, anyone who watches Rogan now, who watched that interview, I will say for myself, I lost all respect for him at that point in time. And that's exactly it. I cannot imagine anyone else who watched that could feel like he was not bold-faced lying, flatly lying about Jeffrey Epstein in the video footage. So from that point in time, I hadn't really had much exposure to him, but since the Epstein file handlings, completely incompetent. I do not trust him at all.
To, you know, to accept things that seem strange where they still have questions, and, you know, it's good luck with making that sell.
That's right.
All right, but that was what I wanted to cover with this. Like I said, I thought it was very interesting, and since I had made the Israeli conspiracy theory video, I wanted to also follow it up with this one because, yeah, there's a lot of inconsistencies, and as these things are continuing to come out, it is just very eyebrow-raising, and, you know, it's very, very questionable to say the least. But if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you like this kind of content, drop me a subscription below. It really does help my channel grow. And if you have made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.